From the days of ancient Greece, where the idea of leadership by majority vote first mounted its roots, to this present dispensation, democracy has greatly evolved with potentials for inclusiveness of the female gender. Today, the participation of women in politics has become integral to the success of any democracy in the world. However, this evolution is yet to extend to certain parts of Africa. In the last 2 episodes of this series, we have attempted to understand why the level of participation of women in the political arena of Nigeria is still in very low figures. We heard from women the many challenges they have had to overcome to either participate or gain access to governance ranging from socio-economic to cultural difficulties. We also learned from the electoral body charged with the conduct of elections in Nigeria, INEC, the efforts they are making to fulfill this promise and the possible factors that could hinder them from making this dream a reality for women. In every electoral process, there are stakeholders such as the media, civil society organizations, political parties, security agencies, religious bodies, and many others. Indeed, the role which these stakeholders can play in advancing the electoral management body cannot be underrated. In this concluding episode of the 3-part docuseries Voice of the Woman, we will continue exploring the role of various stakeholders and how they are helping to reshape the future of women's participation in the electoral process. We all have to come together as a strong force.
Individuals.
Exactly.
Private sector, different, because we are all affected by the same.
Exactly, exactly.
If a woman is competent to do the job, why not give her the job?
I believe in women.
Every Nigerian should be given the opportunity of participating in the electoral process.
We're fortunate enough to get development partners.
As a nation, our job is to create an environment for all our women to prosper.
You are born politician when you are born woman.
Since the Beijing Conference of 1995, which indeed added impetus to the importance of women's participation in politics, efforts have been made by both government and non-governmental organizations to increase their participation. Among such efforts, it's the Gender Policy Initiative by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. The implementation of this policy has led to the opening of a gender desk at every INEC office and establishment. Inyingi Irimaga, who is the Programs Officer for Gender and Development Action, speaks to us about methods INEC has implemented in a bid to improve the participation of women in the political landscape of Nigeria.
INEC has been around strengthening the national gender policy of INEC, ensuring that there are gender considerations made within the Electoral Act to ensure that women fully participate in electoral processes, and then INEC on its own takes responsibility to ensure that women are safe within the electoral process. Women can participate, women have access to the polling units, women can be recognized as full candidates and all of that.
In addition to the efforts of the government and different stakeholders, including the civil society organizations and international development partners, countrywide sensitization programs have been run in an aim to encourage women to participate and thereby demand of full gender political representation. The MD of Nigeria Women's Trust Fund shares her vision of equal access to power and participation of women in the electoral process.
The Nigerian Women's Trust Fund also is an institution that believes in the political participation of women. And in doing this, we also support initiatives around voter education at the state level and at the national level. We are very concerned about the gender gaps in Nigeria's governance process. So we also push very hard and collaborate with INEC to ensure that there is sufficient voter education to get people, especially women, to go out there and vote on election day, and to also ensure that women participate as people that can be voted for. And this is very important to us.
The media houses as stakeholders to the political process bears a setting responsibility to deliver this message to the people, bring into their constant awareness the positive effect of women's inclusion in politics.
As of 2017, just 5.6 women were represented in the national parliament, which is wrong. If women know that, politics creates access to more power and we can be involved in that process, and they know the benefits of women being in politics, which creates that place where decision-making regarding social amenities becomes more gender mainstream than gender focused, we would see the benefits in the country as a whole. So it's not just about women getting those opportunities and gender equality, it's for the country in general. We would have better economic development. Studies show that when women are more involved and empowered in governance structures, in education, the general productivity of the country increases. We have better access to employment, we have better access to economic growth.
More recently, INEC has taken the time to address the media practitioners on the necessity of mainstreaming gender in their reporting.
There has always been that need for us to disseminate information to the larger population of Nigerians, and this cannot be done without the active participation of the media. And that is why we are constantly engaging with the media through workshops and other activities to ensure that they assist in getting more women to participate in the electoral process through gender-sensitive reporting. And we are sure that with all this, we are going to achieve success.
Radio host Tone speaks to us about her efforts in using her radio platform as a tool to develop women and give them a space to project themselves better.
We will be the voice of every woman. We would continue to use WFM as a tool to develop women.
The advancement of technology has added a new and important dynamic to the role of the media, especially when it comes to politics. The increase in the use of social media complements the efforts of mainstream media in their coverage. But more importantly, it creates an opportunity for candidates, especially women, to come into the limelight.
Social media is a big thing. And I remember being in a women's conference, and one of the major discussions is, women in politics don't have so much visibility as their men. And someone said the cheapest means of visibility that you have is social media.
Electoral violence is the greatest enemy of democracy. A study of the democratic history of Nigeria in relation to electoral violence and how it has affected women reveals that there has been a recurrent trend of gender-based violence before, during, and after elections since 1965. The 2011 post-election violence, for instance, resulted in the assault and harassment of an unspecified number of female corps members by protesters across the northern region. The recurring violence associated with the past electoral process has become a major discouraging factor for women coming out to cast their votes on election day.
Typically, women shy away from participating in politics due to the violence. What steps and what structures has INEC put in place to ensure that violence is curtailed during the 2019 general elections?
Well, this is a bigger issue, far beyond the control of the Commission. The first thing for us to do is to ensure that the processes are transparent and that elections are free and fair. But then there are other actors that play roles during elections. They also have to play their roles to safeguard the processes and to ensure that we have peaceful elections and peaceful and acceptable outcome. Here I'm referring to the political parties. I'm also referring to the security agencies.
Institutions like the Women's Situations Room are working closely with INEC and other civil society groups to guard against the use of violence in elections and assuring women across the nation that it is safe for them to exercise their universal suffrage.
The women's situation room, aside educating women on the electoral rights, also provides mitigating factors against possible violence by identifying the red spots during the elections. So we inform women and the general public about these spots. We also offer advice as to how women can keep themselves safe during the elections. So it's an all-round year, it's an all-round process. We're on 24/7, 365 days a year. The Situation Room offers resolution mechanisms that helps to mitigate violence against women in the field and otherwise. But focusing on the election proper, what we do is to offer toll-free line that women can call in. We have observers on the field who also call into the Situation Room and give us incident reports. Because of the partnership we have with INEC, with the police, and other civil society organizations, we reach out to them for validation of the incident and also for resolution of the incident.
We are calling for a rally. It's going to be a sensitization rally to let the women know that this time they have to participate. We want to show our strength, we want to show our PVCs, and we'll be talking about non-violence, because violence is one other thing that kept women away from participating. We got reports from different women who had their posters, their banners, and the rest removed, and some got calls and threatening them to either step down or something. So we are looking at coming up with that rally to show that we are supporting a violence-free election, and that we'll be voting against any political party that will work against women.
In Nigeria, political parties are the only means through which candidates can emerge. The constitution does not allow for independent candidacy. Most recently, political parties have been criticized for giving little or no space for the representation of women. However, following interventions by various stakeholders, many political parties now lay claim to being gender sensitive. Convener of the Not Too Young to Run bill and executive director of YIGA, Samson Itodu, speaks to us on the important role political parties play in increasing women's participation.
The Not Too Young to Run Act didn't say that we are reducing the age for men alone. It says we are reducing the age for everybody, the qualification for office. So males and females are beneficiaries of this particular legislation. It's very important that we have conversations about the cost of politics. And flowing from that is internal party democracy, where we've got godfathers and hegemons in political parties that have hijacked the machinery of political parties for their own selfish gains. And they marginalize women and suppress women. There were a lot of young women in 2015, in the 2019 elections, who vied for office, but some of them were asked to drop their ambition because they were women. And so for us at the YIGA Africa, we believe strongly that in dislodging patriarchy and exclusion is going to take intentional step. And as an organization that is involved in policy advocacy as well as capacity building, we are deploying all the resources that we have to ensure that we provide an enabling environment where young women can have faith in democracy and participate in the political process.
Lawyer and author of Love Does Not Win Elections, Aisha Osori, who is known for her activism in politics and gender equality movement, spoke to us of her experience as a political aspirant and how important it is for upcoming aspirants to have a good understanding of the structures and capacities of whichever political party they choose to run with.
Choosing your party is a big deal. I think I underestimated how important your party is. And I think that's something that people who want to be in politics long term in Nigeria need to start looking at. What are the available platforms for running for office? I think we're tired of the traditional type of candidate. We're tired of the traditional type of politician. And people are now ready to start seeing more different types of candidates running. And I think if you look at the presidential field in Nigeria right now, with Kingsley Moghalu and Obi Ezekwesili and Yele Showore, you will see that they're not the typical politicians. So I think that's also good news, that we've gotten to a saturation point where we're saying, okay, we kind of know the prototype and model of the typical successful politician, but more of us who have technical expertise and other types of expertise are now interested in running, and the public are fairly receptive to seeing different types of candidates. Some of the non-traditional candidates are facing is that their parties are structured, they've chosen parties that are structured as traditional parties. So we're going to have to invest, even though people are laughing and saying, oh, these parties are not going to win anything, they have no structures. The question is, what is a structure? When we say party, when you say you need party structures, what are you talking about? You're talking about the fact that you have memberships, you have spread, you have networks, you have people who are contributing funds, you have rules, you have regulations.
Just as important in the advancement of women's participation in politics is the participation of women with disabilities. Civil societies like the Center for Citizens with Disabilities, CCD, amongst others, have partnered with INEC and women advocacy groups to increase the participation of women living with disabilities.
Right now, at the Joint National Association of Persons with Disability, we're going to a lot of advocacy to raise awareness about the rights of persons with disabilities, about the barriers that persons with disability face, and how development partners, agencies, leisure society can begin to address those barriers so that persons with disability will participate effectively in society. We talk about the human right of persons with disability. We're speaking about inclusive development for persons with disability. So our whole work is to promote the human right of persons with disability and promote that issue in all development sector so that we can have inclusive development for persons with disability. So we are taking the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability as our tool, and also the SDGs. Recall the SDG says, leave no one behind. So I don't know if that's going to be true for Nigeria. If we don't urgently address the issues of persons with disability within a legal framework.
The Albino Foundation is an advocacy organization being run by persons with albinism to advocate for the rights of persons with albinism in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. Our intervention has really been, as an advocacy organization, our intervention has really been with the women that have disability. And then we find them in the communities. So the intervention we have really had in this time towards 2019 elections, seeking for participation, electoral participation for them, has been sensitization. Because like I said earlier, most of these women don't even know they have a right. But when we go out like we did before the Osun election, we realize that some of these women, the way you talk as we're having this discussion, you see them giving you positive responses. Like, yes, you say women can do this, and you see them jeering, yes. And then you ask, so why haven't you participated? What has been your challenge? So what we have done, like coming from the Osun election, was we've encouraged these women, and we noted some of them who had interest, and then we followed up with a training. This training gave them opportunity. What are the things I need to know as a woman? And even as a person with disability, is it my right? Yes.
I am tired of the exclusion, the discrimination, and the underrepresentation of young people, persons with disabilities, women from development agenda and government policies and programs. And this moved me to run for office, to formulate policies that will give them their rights, the right to education, healthcare delivery services, employment opportunities, and other issues.
International organizations such as the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, the International Republican Institute, IRI, and the European Centre for Electoral Support, ECES, has lent immense support to INEC to fulfill its mandate and, by and large, increase women's participation in the electoral process. Kathy Latiwa has worked with the European Centre for Electoral Support for years and collaborated in the implementation in Nigeria. Her qualification as a lead facilitator and her ability to speak different languages, French, Swahili, has brought her to work in various parts of the world. Her focus on African nations has helped to improve the quality of life for the poor and ensure a better future for the younger generation, especially through education. Today, she is the project advisor at the European Centre for Electoral Support in charge of gender and inclusion in Nigeria. She speaks to us passionately about her work and their efforts in trying to encourage and advance the participation of women in politics and the electoral process.
We are using this a documentary to educate the population because it's a way that people are connected. You know, people like watching movie, watching TV. So it's a way also to be in contact direct with the grassroots, with the population. And also we have some jingles in different language like Hausa, etc.
Danish Ambassador Jesper Kamp, who is also the EU focal person on gender in Nigeria, believes that the recommendations of the international communities to organizations like INEC and the United Nations could go a very long way in helping to formulate the right policies to better enhance the participation of women in politics.
The role of the European Union in promoting women's participation in governance and politics and the political process is to inform interlocutors, stakeholders, government and other parties here about how we do elsewhere in the world, how they can be successful doing it and interacting with them. Additionally, it's also to support women's NGOs, women groups here, UN Women, whoever it is that strive to promote women in politics in Nigeria. I think it's important for the international community to put forward recommendations to the National Assembly and to politicians, but also to INEC, to be able to introduce potentially quotas or other measurements in the legislation that will ensure women's participation in political progress and in the election.
As we have shown throughout this docu-series, women across Nigeria are able to confidently run their homes while sustaining very successful careers in various fields and sectors, thereby proving beyond any doubt their capacity to strategize, implement, and most importantly, their capacity to lead. Beyond the right to participation, which the Constitution ensures for women, these qualities they possess have indeed earned them a rightful place in the political arena. The progressive support of citizens and government alike towards women's participation in politics serves as a beacon of hope for women across the nation. It is therefore imperative that the relevant stakeholders draw strength from this and sustain the fight in advocating for the empowerment of women, both economically and politically. Stakeholders must continue to push for the necessary legislation that will accommodate women in both elective and appointive positions.
There are people that I have seen and it's inspired me to read better, to understand, to ask questions, that a Waje will not
typically
ask. Yes, because I would just be a girl singing and everybody loving me and that's it.
Yes.
But they've inspired me to buy books, to ask questions, to have conversations with people like you. And the reason why is because I'm going on a journey that by the end of the elections, I want to say, okay, this is where we are now. Where are we going next? And where we're going next involves me.
Exactly.